I don't want to say welcome back. Can someone else say back welcome?
No.
I don't want to say welcome back. Episode 12?
I guess it doesn't matter now.
I guess it doesn't really matter anymore. We've got a great guest with us this week under the name of Jon Steele. He is an ultra marathon runner, and he also runs the website. It's Hardmoors. Is it the Hardmoors website?
Yeah, Hardmoors Race
so
Series.
Where you set up basically all the ultra marathons that are run within the North Yorkshire Moors, and that's where I stumbled across you. And then I came across a couple of your blogs, etc. And yeah, some of the accolades that you've got are pretty impressive. I'm going to start with the biggest one that grasped my attention more than any others, the 53 ultra marathons in 52 weeks.
Yeah, it was back in about 2012. My wife went away to work abroad in Saudi for a year, and we're both ultra runners, and I suddenly realised I'd got all these weekends free, and I didn't really know what to do, so I set myself a challenge to run an ultra marathon every weekend for the course of the year. It was quite.
So you were doing these predominantly on the weekends. You're not during the week, sort of.
At that time, yeah. At a time when I started, I was working sort of full time during the week, and I'd only basically get some Saturdays and the odd Sundays off.
Yeah.
Towards the end of the year, I left my job, which I had at the time, and I was doing some personal training. So it meant I had the possibilities to get out during the week, and I think probably in December there was maybe a couple of weeks where I did 2 to 3 races because I had missed 1 or 2 weekends throughout the course of the year due to illness or the races which I organised myself, which got in the way of actually my own running.
Okay. Oh, great.
Typical.
Yeah. So 53 marathons and ultra marathons in 52 weeks. Which one, if you had to put your finger on it, which one would you say? I guess there's a difference between physically tough and mentally tough. If you could split them up between two, would you say there's one that you found physically tough or one more mentally tough? Like, how would you?
Well, yeah. I had peaks and troughs throughout the course of the year. I think one of the mentally toughest ones that I ran was probably the Tooting-Bec 24-hour race, which is around an 800-metre track.
Oh.
And yeah, that was very mentally tough, going around the same lap over and over and over and again. And with a 24-hour race, you have this aspect that if you walk, it won't make any difference. If you run fast, it won't make any difference because you're not trying to get to a certain point by a time. You've just got 24 hours to keep going round.
Yeah.
Oh.
Physically tough. That year I had the Lakeland 100, and that is always a very physically tough race, which takes you to new depths of suffering.
Yeah.
And by that time, it was late July, and I had a lot of miles in my legs. My legs were very tired before I ran that race. So, but then later on in the year, I had 1 or 2 runs. I had a Glenmore 24-hour race, which was again a 24-hour race, but it was on trail. It was in Glenmore, so a 5-mile loop, which is a completely different thing from the Tooting-Bec.
Yeah, it sounds a little bit easier mentally anyway.
It was. Yes.
The fact that you're out there on a trail as well, as opposed to running around an 800 metres.
24-hour race though, it's just so hard for me to comprehend. Like for someone like me to even think 24 hours is just ridiculous. Like, what drives you in those moments? Like in those times, like what's pushing you to do those go to them limits?
During a 24-hour race, like say Tooting-Bec, you have to search very deep inside yourself to just continue on moving.
Yeah.
One thing that I had a crew on that. I had 2 friends that came along, and they parked up near the course itself, and they weren't allowed to move their car for 24 hours. And I thought, well, if I drop out, it means we're going to be sat here for 24 hours. And they only had a 2-man tent. And I suddenly thought, you know what, I've got to keep on going. That did help that time round. But something like the Glenmore 24, the scenery was stunning. With anything like a 24-hour race or 100 miler, 100-plus miler, you're going to get highs and lows. And the highs are amazingly high and the lows are really low, but if you get a really bad low, you know that you're going to get high at some point. So it's
it's a great way to see it.
So 100 mile, for anybody listening, 100 miles on foot like that to me, at sometimes it just sounds so daunting that I don't know why anybody would want to do it. But you talk about the highs and the lows within it. Like, can you have a real low point at like an early point in the race, but then you'll pick back up? And when you say a low point, are you talking like physical with cramp? Are you talking mentally, as in like, oh my god, like the task in front of you that you still got left is daunting?
Well, one thing you nailed it on the head right there. At 20 miles, you can feel pretty rubbish. And at 90 miles, you can feel amazing. You feel like you can run forever. Both mentally and physically. Predominantly mentally, it's a case of you know how far you've got to go and how bad you're feeling. And it's only purely experience that tells you that you're going to feel better later on. You know, a lot of people, DNF, which is do not finish some races, some 100-mile races, purely because they think that they feel bad now, they're going to feel much, much worse, or it's not going to get any better. They don't realise that round the corner, they could just feel fantastic. That isn't always the case. Sometimes you can run a 100-mile race and you can just feel as flat as a pancake for the whole duration. But it's like a lifetime in a day. You know, different range of emotions that you go through as something else. And I suppose that's what makes you go and do another one and another one and another one again, because you forget about the bad points. But the bad points just accentuate, if that's the correct word, the high points. So yeah, it's more the emotional side of things, and you're thinking, oh, this is ridiculous. Well, I could just stop here. You know, I just feel dreadful. I feel ill. I feel sick. You know, some people have problems digesting food and being sick and whatever. And so it's, I would say it's mental and physical. And sometimes your legs may feel dead, and various things. It's a lot to do with the mind, really is. I think a huge amount of it is to do with what you're feeling mentally at that time. And
Mainly. So how did this journey into running start? Like, what got you into it in the beginning?
I've always done a little bit of running. I used to teach martial arts and I used to do quite a bit of running for that. But 2-3 miles and things like that. I was in the army a long time ago and we used to do running then, obviously, up and down hills. But for me, the ultra running started in about 2003, 2004. I was in the Lake District and I saw a board in Grasmere and it had information about the what's known as the Bob Graham round.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that today, yeah.
And when I first read it, I thought, well, 72 miles or whatever it's quoted at being, it's various different distances have been said.
Various different, No one really says what it actually is. I think I've read 56 as like the minimum, what they say it is.
It's just so very, and then I equated that, because at the time I wasn't a runner, I equated that and I thought 24 hours, well, that's, I think at the time my brain was working out, that's 3.5 miles an hour or something like that, whatever it is. And I thought, that doesn't sound too bad, and until you realise the terrain you're on, you're down to 1 mile an hour, and just done various things like that. So I decided to train for it, but then I got waylaid and I saw, a running magazine about the UTMB, and then that, which is a race around Mont-Blanc, going through Italy and France and also Switzerland, and that really kind of interested me.
Grabbed your attention.
Yeah, exactly. Around about that time, there was no Facebook, there was no information out there on the internet. It was at the time, I think a lot of people were following information from what maybe cyclists were doing or Ironman athletes were doing to try and get an idea how to train, how to eat, and various things like that. The difference between now and then is just unreal. And then I eventually met more and more people, like-minded people, and then got more into these kind of events. So,
do you think it becomes some sort of like very healthy addiction, like any sort of endurance?
Or can it become unhealthy?
I think you've got that. Exactly, that's more like it. Yeah, I think it does start to be like that. It does, exactly. It's.
Do you find yourself constantly looking for the next race, or now you're more in an organisation where like you might not look to the next race to do yourself, but are you always looking for the next race either to set up or to race or to get people involved with?
I think I'm always looking for the next race to race, yeah.
Yeah.
The next challenge.
Yeah.
Or some races I go back to see if I can improve the time, but at the same time I'm always looking for the next distance, and my favourite distance tends to be over 100 miles because you can go slower and you can eat more. So, and also it throws everybody into a similar situation where you get some of the faster people that their speed tends to drop, you know, and it becomes more a mental game than anything, and who can suffer the longest, I suppose.
You must have an incredible ability to suffer. You must have an incredible ability.
Yeah,
your threshold up to suffer must be pretty high considering the amount of just the vast amount of races that you've done in general.
Until I get a cold.
The man flu is a real thing.
Yeah, exactly. As long as I have control of my own suffering, that's fine. I think I suppose that is one thing which isn't a skill, I suppose, but where I don't have the physical speed, or the genetics to be running like a 2:45 marathon or various, then what I just try and do is have the mental attitude to push on further and longer and keep going. Stubbornness, I suppose, as such. But at the same time, but it isn't. There's unhealthier things out there, but it isn't probably at a certain level. It doesn't become. You lose the health side of things because you're pushing your body through too much, probably. And you're draining it as such. And over the years, I've done a lot, which has developed quite a bit of a resilience. But at the same time, I do have injuries. And it's, also being married to Shirley, who's an ultra runner, our own sense of reality is a bit differed. And then with organising races and a lot of the people I hang around with,
it's kind of your world, isn't it?
It is, yeah. My world is based around that. What I mean? I'm full-time organising races. When I'm organising races, then I'm running in races. And when I'm not doing those things and I'm talking to friends on Facebook Messenger or something like that, or going out for something to eat, they're usually the runners. I'm trying not to be too one-dimensional with things, but it just ends up being that. So that is my world. And then you hear about somebody doing something amazing, but you don't really see it as being amazing anymore because you're so used to seeing people do things that I think what I tend to find amazing is when you get somebody who is physically unfit and changes themselves, and then you see them take part in an event and push themselves out a little bit further, whether it's a mile or 2 miles. As opposed to people that may have run for a couple of thousand miles over a couple of weeks or something like that. So it's
because that's somebody's going out the way there to really change their outlook on life. Because if they're in a physical state where they might not be so healthy or so fit, to then turn around and just do something as simple as the park runs. Like the park runs are getting so big now. Like it's a 5K, but for some people it's just a huge challenge. And that for me is like, I don't know. It's really good to see people like willing to do this, like change the direction of their life and change their physical appearance by just taking a healthier approach on things.
Very true. I mean, really is. I mean, moving slightly away from that, there are a lot of people, not everyone, but quite a few people I know who run ultras have changed maybe one form of addiction, a very unhealthy addiction, may have been alcohol, may have been drugs or whatever. And they found a new addiction in the ultra running. They're still going to end up in very similar circumstances, probably. But they've changed their life around, and then you get like you just mentioned there, mums or fathers who have never done any fitness, never done anything, and they decide to take part in a park run, and then they start to eat and live healthier, and it's great. And they have probably at the time they're having to motivate themselves because possibly the partners similar to them but doesn't really like them do it because maybe they're jealous. It's just,
they become part of this big
dynamics.
community. Yeah, the dynamics are very interesting. They become part of a community where everybody's encouraging it, and then if something like the parkrun, I mean, my dad's done, I think he's done over 150 now. I know, it's pretty impressive for somebody who's, I mean, he's 58-year-old, but he just enjoys going down there and being part of his little group. Like, he's got his little WhatsApp group where they all message each other. And I really would encourage anybody just to get into these little things. Like, if it could be just your parkrun 5K, or it could be your local ultra marathon. I really would encourage people to get it. In fact, you know what? I was on your website today, and Shakk, I know it's your birthday. I really wish I could have done this. It's your birthday on the 4th of November. And I was going to enter you into one of the races online that you can.
Well, that can be sorted.
Yeah, well, you can get there's the 5 and 10Ks on there, isn't there? And I thought, you know what? I'm going to get this, and I'm going to give Shakk it on this podcast for his birthday. But then I couldn't enter it.
What a birthday present that would have been, eh?
We can soon sort that out. Don't worry about that.
Shakk, you know
what? Maybe I do need to do something. We was talking about on the way down. I really do need to push myself physically in some way, and I love the mental aspect to it the most, but obviously I've lacked the physical aspect for it most of my life.
But I mean, like, it's up to you if you want to change that direction of, like, it's up to you if you want to go in that direction in life. But you are pushing yourself differently. You're pushing yourself with your music, etc. So I think, in general, I know we're talking about running right now, but it's important for anybody to just find something that they've got passion in and just pursue it. And
very much so. I think that's it. Yeah, with whatever it is, that is it. Yeah. To have something to, to push to,
just to pursue, set yourself some goals and really go out there and try and achieve them.
I guess doing all these miles that you've had a lot of time to reflect on your life and everything, because these endurance races I guess a lot of people that have been in them dark places, it will attract them as well, because it gives you a chance to conquer your demons when you're on your course.
Yeah, absolutely. And you talked about addiction earlier, and do you know of a bloke called Johnny Mack? He's now a sponsored athlete by Nike, and he's an Ironman. And he was previously in prison, and he was like this big armed robber and everything like that. And he went through this massive life transformation. He's went from solitary confinement, what's solitary confinement? Just that within the UK. Yeah. He was in that. And then he started training in the gym, got on the rower. He broke a lot of indoor world records in the rowing machine. And then when he left prison, he wanted to take up rowing, but he realised the difference between indoor rowing and actually rowing out on the river or out in the sea is completely different. It's not the same as being in the indoor rower. So then he took up Ironman triathlon. Oh, in fact, the first thing he done was an ultra marathon where he ran is the one that runs from London to London down south, and I think. It can't be as far as Bournemouth.
There's a few. There's London's Brighton.
London to Brighton.
Yes,
It was London to Brighton, and then he got a taxi back from. And he said, like, of all the things he's ever done in his life, he's done many of Ironmans after that, and he's doing very well. But he said of all the things he's ever done, ultramarathons are by far the hardest. And that was a 50-mile one, and he said that is bad. Yeah. So when he leaves Ironman in the future, I think he wants to go down the route of picking up ultramarathons and seeing what he can do there, because he is running right now sub 3-hour marathons, which is incredibly impressive. I mean, for anybody listening who's into running, I think a sub 3-hour marathon is one of those barriers that people try and break to really sort of establish themselves within the running world. But I mean, me myself, a 3-hour marathon. I mean, I've got a cyclist background, and that to me it sounds tough. It's sub 3. But to go on to what you were saying earlier about as well being physically tired, How do you really end up? How do you always push one leg in front of the other? Because when I was on my Ironman, right, so I'd done the 112 miles on the bike, and then I jumped onto I only had 3 months training, granted, so I didn't have enough time to prepare what it was like to get off the bike and then start running. But I know for the full duration of that marathon, I was absolutely fucked. And I remember mile 26 felt the exact same as mile 1, and both of them felt horrendous. Yeah. Not at one point within that marathon was I in a state of mind where I was like, oh, you know what? Yeah, I'm getting going here. I'm getting going, and then I'd have to stop, and then I'd get an upset stomach. I had to stop 4 times to go on toilet. These little things that were just. I remember at the time I was thinking, ultra marathons just sound brutal, like absolutely brutal. I'm doing a marathon here off the bike, which I know is different. You work in different muscle groups, etc. But I mean, how do you find yourself when you're at mile 20 to then think, right, I've got 80 miles left here. All I have to do is put one leg in front of the other. Like, do you find yourself entering a meditative state where you do enter some sort of flow state, or do you just have your own natural way of getting around it?
I think we're all chasing that flow state, and I used to hit that flow state a lot more. But the more that I've run, the less times I've hit that flow state.
Really?
Yeah. And which is very annoying. I think it's like the more you do, the less you get that reward. But when you get that reward, it's amazing. Yeah. As we know. So we're probably chasing that elusive flow state. Mm-hmm. But the problem is, because we're chasing that, we probably don't realise we're not accepting what we're doing at that time and seeing those things that are all around us, because we're too busy aiming for a specific goal. Just moving very quickly back, I did an Olympic triathlon a few years ago, and the only one, and obviously it's a 10k run after the cycle. I got off the bike, and I thought with being an ultra runner I'd be okay, but I hadn't done enough brick sessions.
Yeah, that's it. The brick sessions count.
Exactly. Yeah. My legs had gone, so I completely understand. And there was no point along there where I had any kind of amazing run.
Right,
you know, it was was hell.
Yeah.
But I think it's just purely from that experience, knowing that things are going to get better, and then just trying to change your head. Sometimes I concentrate on how I'm moving. Look, when I get tired, I think, let's see if I can move something around, check my form, make sure my form's right and everything, and try and find the easiest way of moving forward. And then suffering a little bit, and then eventually it comes into a point where my legs are moving. I'm mentally not, I guess, I'm mentally not in a flow place, but my legs are in a flow situation.
Yeah.
Earlier this year, I did the Northern Traverse, which is a coast-to-coast race, which is a rain-right coast-to-coast. It goes over the hills, starts in the Lake District and finishes in North York Moors. And a stunning event, and there's a checkpoint every 40, 50 miles where there's food and various things, and you can sleep if you want to, and then continue on. And the very first day, I had a really bad day. Just everything was, I felt sick, I felt my legs were killing me, they were a mess, and I was going up a pass over towards Helvellyn, down by Grisdale Tarn to drop down to Patterdale, and it was night and it was pouring down with rain, and I was in a really bad state. In fact, I actually stopped, and I never normally do this, and I sort of texted my wife and says, that's it, I've had enough.
Oh, really?
You know what I mean? Yeah. And she messaged me back and says, just keep on going, just relax, stop aiming for a specific time, which I wanted to do, get some sleep at the next checkpoint, which was Patterdale, and then carry on. And so I dropped down into Patterdale, and I went through it. When I came through the door, and it collapsed through the door, it was a right mess. I got a couple of hours sleep, got up, got changed, and the next day the sun was out, and it just got better and better the time. And from that point onwards, every time I came to a checkpoint where I could sleep, I'd asked how many people were at the checkpoint to sleep, and they'd say 5 or 6. So I thought, right, I'm not going to sleep and continue on, because I've passed 5 or 6 people. Because I dropped to the back, and I saw that every time I was passing these people, and I got a real buzz from that point, and I'd push harder and harder and harder, and I'd use them as a competition, you know, as it went on. And I got past Richmond, which is 120 miles, 130 miles into the event. And I was talking to my wife on the phone, running through these fields. And I was just running. I wasn't breathing heavy or anything. I was just talking away. And I suddenly said, I'm not even out of breath. I'm just could run and run and run. But I'd gone through hell to get to that point. When I got to, I bumped into another run I'd seen earlier, and we ran along for a bit, and then it started to get dark, and we needed to get some sleep. But, I wanted to push on, but he wanted to get a bit of sleep, so we slept at this, outside a service station on the A19.
Oh my word! I know. Is it the Shell one? Is there a Shell one?
Yes, I think so. Yeah.
This rings a bell. Because a couple of years ago, Imagine we just weirdly cross paths at this moment in time.
Yes.
I remember I used to drive lorries for a
Yes.
living, right? And I
Yeah.
was driving up the A19, and there was people like just randomly there at this service station. I was thinking,
Yes.
why would they be there? Like,
Yes.
with no car or nothing,
Yeah.
and where they came from and where they're going.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't be surprised if they, because this is just before the entrance to the North Yorkshire Moors.
It
isn't
is.
it?
That's
Yeah.
that's where it is. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that service station, we found a bit of floor along the side. There was an air vent and a bit of floor. And
Yeah.
we thought, oh, maybe warm there. It wasn't warm. It was bloody freezing. And we laid there for half an hour. Shivering away with this plastic bag chucked over me, and then continued on.
Yeah.
So I had 3 hours sleep on the first night, and after that, I just I think I didn't sleep anything, maybe 20 minutes for over the next 3 days, and then
Jesus.
But then right at the end, this isn't. I'm trying to say this not because it sounds like I'm bragging. I'm not doing this to brag. I'm trying to explain how you feel with these things. Towards the end, for the last 5 or 6 miles on the Cleveland Way, you come in on the Cleveland Way on the coast to coast into Robin Hood's Bay. Absolutely stunning. It is on there.
Absolutely.
A few of my mates had come out because they were allowed to run the last 5 or 6 miles with me because you weren't allowed support throughout the race. And we ran along. I started walking and I started getting quicker and quicker. And I started trying to race them. And then I got to Robin Hood's Bay and there's that big slope which drops down.
Yeah.
And I sprinted down there to the finish. And I didn't expect my wife to be there because she kept it a secret that she was going to be there.
Yeah. Amazing.
And it was fantastic. And at the end of that, they have a bit of a joke thing where they have a race from the bottom of that slope to the top of that race, and your times are recorded as a bit of a joke. It's a bit of a laugh.
Yeah.
And, sort of like 10 minutes later, I sort of ran up there quite strongly towards the end, and collapsed at the top. But I felt better then than that very first day when I should have been as fresh as anything because I'd rested, I'd eaten properly. Yeah. But towards the end, and the only thing that could be was the mental attitude, the mental bit which comes into play. So it's just believing that at some point it's going to come into place, and then your body stops whinging, gives up, gets to the point where it says, all right, I'm going to allow you to do what you want to do. I'm going to allow you to go out there and run now. But I've given up with you. Just do what you want. Hurt yourself. I don't care. You know what I mean? Gets to that point. Yeah. The only thing is when you start running further distances, when you do a training run, it takes longer for your body to give up nagging. You know what I mean? Yeah. So whereas probably when I first started running, it would nag for the first half a mile if I ran 6 miles. Yeah. Now it's like 6 miles into it, it's still nagging.
There's so many life lessons you just get from those type of experiences. So when you were just so close to quitting, if you did quit, you wouldn't have experienced that at the end.
No, exactly.
Elation.
And then another thing, you must have an amazing wife, a good support system there to say, look, you get some rest at the checkpoint, crack on, keep going.
She's fantastic for that. Fantastic. And some of the races. Some races she does, I crew for her. Like a support crew, drive around. Incredible. And then other ones she does for me, and she's fantastic at it. Really is that because she knows what I need to eat, not what I want myself, but what I should have. Or what I think I'm going to have. She, and she's quite motivating. She says, "Come on, go on." I won't use the language, but go on. Go on. And it's a great bond, but also at the same time, she ran the other year the Kerry Way Ultra, which is about 200k, 125, 126 miles.
The distances of these are incredible.
Unfortunately, she had to drop out of that for injuries, but she was at 90 miles, and she was walking along, her blisters were awful. And I saw her a couple of points. And I didn't know what to do. I didn't want to say, look, just call it a day. But, because I could see she was in so much pain.
Yeah. Must be difficult
to see. It was like that mixture of the two things. Yeah. And I think that's the first time that I'd seen her in that kind of condition. Her knee was bad. And at the same time, I wanted to say, let's just keep pushing on. But the other side of me wanted to say, no. It was quite... there was quite a few tears. I was sat in the car, there was a few tears thinking,
those decisions are difficult.
Yes.
You're torn between your head and your heart.
Where you were at the beginning of your race pretty much before, where she's done the 90 miles and you're in bad state. It's a tough call, isn't it? But you might as well call it a day then and have another race, have another go at it another time, instead of completely writing yourself off.
Yeah, exactly. Yes, it is a very... Yes.
So one thing, like, I always think about ultra runners, they must be very connected to themselves as a person, because there's no way you could put yourself through those physical times of stress without really getting to understand yourself as a person, like your thoughts, your feelings, your emotions. One way that I sort of deal with these sort of things is meditation. I don't know whether, like, do you ever do any sort of meditation or injury prevention with yoga? Do you do any of these sort of training within your own personal time?
I do yoga. I've been doing yoga for the last 2 months. Yeah. And I normally get put through a lot of pain because thanks to running, my insteps are so tight. My knees, my quads are so tight. Yeah. When I try to do a lot of positions, my hips are tight. Everything is.
Your hips, your hips are a big one. Yeah. Very big one.
And I don't think I don't meditate in the normal aspects of it. I tend to sometimes fall into that when I'm running. Sometimes in a way, in an aspect.
I imagine it's pretty much like meditating.
Yes, in that kind of way. Yeah. I tend to find when I've tried in the past, I'm not great. I tend to don't have that mind control. Yeah. I have the mind control in a way, not to shut everything out. I have the mind control to continue on with things, and I tend to have various tricks which I use.
Which you were telling us one of these tricks earlier, weren't you? Where if you're starting to feel a little bit of a niggle, like you might just change the way that you're running and just like the movement of your arm or something as simple as that.
I have another mental trick which I've used in the past, which actually sounds a bit crazy. It isn't. And I hope I'm not going too much off subject. I don't want to bore you too much.
We can go wherever you want.
It has to. I have to go back into another race, the first race, which I can explain where I use that. Yeah. And so, at this race over near Buxton on Shining Tor, near the Cat and Fiddle pub in winter, organised by a guy called Mark Cockbain, who's a bit of a sadist, called The Hill. And
I've seen this. I was going to bring it up in a bit. So I'm glad that you talked about it.
And it was I think 55 or 53 reps. I can't remember, 53 or 55 reps. Up a hill, which was about 2.9 miles long, but the hill was runnable to a certain degree. That was the whole thing behind it. The hill had to be so that you were going up it feeling like you should run it. It wasn't that steep where you could run up it. It was kind of like the whole aspect was to just keep going up and down, and the longest you were allowed to stop was half an hour. And so the whole thing was 160 miles, which you had to do in sub 48 hours. And it was in December, and it was the shortest day, so it would get dark at 3. And sort of.
You're looking at half 3, aren't you? Really?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And it started on a Friday night at 7:00, and it was fog, and it was pouring down with rain, awful weather, absolutely awful weather. And about 15 of us, this was 2013, about 15 of us set off to start with, because there wasn't many people that were interested in spending Christmas doing that.
Really? Yeah. I'm quite surprised.
And so we were going up and down, doing these reps up and down, and it was bleak, it was miserable. Eventually people started to drop out, and throughout the course of the night, the next morning, you were down to, I forget now, but 4 or 5. Crazy. And as the time went by, more people, and there was just 2 of us. And then that person dropped out. And I suddenly thought, right, well, okay, there's only me, so if I finish, I win. Or I'm last time, either first or last, whatever you want to look at it, And I thought, I never win anything. I don't win races. Yeah. And I thought, if I just continue on. Yeah. So that was a real mental drive. But going on, and so I was on my own, I think, for 16, 17 hours going up and down the hill,
so
up and down the hill.
A long way to go.
Exactly. Going up and down, and you weren't allowed support. You just you went up to this little camper van which was parked outside the pub. You could go in the pub to get your bag, to get some food out your bag, and when you went to the pub, it was nice and warm, and there was all the people who dropped out were fast asleep on the floor. So every time you went in, so what you had to change is that this sounds awful, but we had to change it because all these guys are my friends, and they're fantastic runners, but you had to change your mindset. So when you walked in there thinking, I don't want to join them, I'm better than them. You know, that moment, it was like, I'm not better than them. Some of those are damn sight better runners than I am. It just I had the mental fortitude on that day to continue on. And so you had to change everything round, and I started to realise that I needed to look at myself in two ways. I had to be two people. I had to have somebody sat on my shoulder, kind of pushing me on, where I'd got this other side of me which was kind of negative. So I had to split myself in two, really. And then I decided what I'd do is I'd lie to one side of me and say, when we get to, say, 100 miles, we'll stop. Let's just do 100 miles, then we stop. And then, so that side of me stopped nagging. This side of me was quite happy and figured out, right now, even though this is all me, you know what I mean? It's like having to, But it worked. Yeah. And so then we got to 100 miles, and that voice started up and said, let's just do a little bit more and see what happens. Yeah. Let's just do a little bit more. Yeah. So it was dealing with the negativity side, thinking, let's just stop. It was dealing with that. And then you get to such a point where you've got 20, 30 miles left, and which is, 30 miles is a long way, but when you've done that amount, it doesn't feel the same amount. You're equating it to different races that you've done. You're thinking, you get to 26 miles, you think, oh, we've only got a marathon left. You know what I mean? It's like those things that you use along the way. And then I had the last 2 laps to go, and they were very painful. At one point, I was very close to not completing it in time, but then I managed to pick up quite a bit. And so it was a real mental test, but the only way I could use was to split myself in two. Yeah. And I still sometimes do that.
That's
I still
technique.
fall to that. Yeah, exactly. And pretend I'm two people. And then just, so I'm trying to find a positive from it and then shut this other side off. I tried to explain that to a non-runner once before, and they just thought it was the...
It just, I absolutely understand where you're coming from.
These deep places, you need to do things like this to get through.
Yeah, you do. Yeah. It's just like a little mental hurdle that you gave yourself. So it's a coping mechanism, and at the end of the day, we've got a subconscious that we don't fully understand. Like a lot of stuff goes on there that we don't get. Like 95% of thoughts come from our subconscious, and if those thoughts are going to be negative and they're going to be sat on your shoulder, then feed them. Feed them not in a way that they're going to beat you. Feed them in the way that you're just giving them another little milestone for them to aim for. So that's kind of what you're doing when you split yourself in two.
Yes.
Give yourself a positive and a negative. Yeah. It's just another way to overcome these obstacles. And it is so difficult because ultra events are difficult. Like you're going to be in the locker for a long time. You're going to be in pain for a long time. And whenever I've experienced long drawn out physical stress periods, I mean, I used to be in the military as well, so I'd done like 30 milers and stuff like that.
Yes.
And you find yourself, I don't want to sound egotistical, but you do find yourself feeding off other people failing.
Yes,
and
you do, yeah.
It's not an egotistical thing, but you naturally see other people dropping out or struggling elsewhere, and you're like, it gives you a little bit of confidence in yourself to keep on pushing forward and to keep putting one leg in front of the other. Because no doubt about it that you're probably feeling some really negative emotions at that time. When you see them dropping out before, like the minute before, you were probably thinking of dropping out yourself. But then you see them dropping out and you're like, oh no, I might be able to keep on going here. I might be able to keep on going. But I mean, there's so many different races that you've done. And I want to talk a little bit about the Lakeland 100, because you said in the 53 ultras in 52 days, you said that physically you think that was the hardest. Where is it? What is it? What villages do you go through? Are you crossing over any sort of mountains? Like what peaks are you hitting?
Basically, it starts in Coniston and finishes in Coniston. It's a circle.
Oh, right, yeah.
And it goes over some of the Lakeland passes.
It's absolutely gorgeous around there, by the way.
It's beautiful.
It's amazing.
Yeah. You're going over quite a few of the passes along the way, and the terrain is very rocky. And it destroys your feet. If I remember rightly, that year it was a wet year.
Yeah.
And I started to suffer trench foot much later on in the race.
Whoa. Yeah.
But it's so rocky that it just really does trash your legs. And you get guys that are out there and they're doing like 21 hours, 22 hours. And then the cut-off time is, I think, 40 hours. Every time
they're doing it almost twice as quick?
Yes, twice as quick.
Oh, my word.
And you just don't understand how they are moving over that terrain in that time. It's a different kind of beast. Unfortunately, I tend to be, I'm always roughly around 15 stone. And so I'm giving about sort of,
so
some of these guys
15,
are like 9
stone.
Yeah, exactly.
Big for an ultra
It is,
unfortunately.
unfortunately. Yeah. So, yeah, it is. So some of these guys like 9 stone, and it's, but how they move over those, it's just unreal.
Like they've got a spring in the step, like
exactly.
like a gazelle.
Exactly. And so the amount of time that you're on your feet throughout the duration, and then it depends on what the weather is like. I've run the race. I did it this year, and it's the 5th time sort of completed the race. And each year I always say I'm going to go back and have a good run, and it never ever happens. It's always much slower than I ever wanted it to be. It's but yeah, it heads from Coniston, it goes over towards my brain's gone. Go Wasdale, then Wasdale towards Buttermere.
Oh right, yeah.
Buttermere over towards Keswick, and Keswick over towards.
Keswick, I think Keswick is one of my favourite places ever to visit. I really do.
I love it.
You know what? I feel this country in general though, it's just got so much to offer.
Yes.
Like, the countryside, whether it's the North Yorkshire Moors, so you do a lot of organising up there.
Yes.
Whether it's the Lake District, whether it's Scotland or Wales, we've just got so much to offer.
Stunning, beautiful.
Especially when it comes to ultras. So I don't know if you want to talk a little bit about the events that you organise.
Yeah,
and the reason why I actually stumbled across it was for the 200-mile race that I seen. I was just like, 200 miles. So we've got a friend at the minute who's travelling, and he's very much into running.
Yes.
And he was going to go to New Zealand, and he said he was looking everywhere for ultramarathons to enter. And there was nothing, absolutely nothing. He could find certain things in New Zealand, but they were going to be far away from where he was. They were few and far between.
Yes.
And then I sent him a message. I was like, look what I've just found on our doorstep. And he was like, mate, I can't believe it. Like, that's on our doorstep.
Yes.
I've been travelling all around the world. I can't find anything even like it. But then we've got this unbelievable platform in your website where there's so many different races for people to enter if they really wanted. And the option is there for them to take to really push themselves. But so I don't know if you want to talk a little bit about the races that you are presenting to us.
Yes. Yeah, well, it's called Hardmoors Race Series, and we have what we call the 26.2 series, and then we have the Ultra Series. The very first race was the Hardmoors 110, which we set up in 2008, which was the Cleveland Way. How it just became is because I had done a bit of running around the North Yorkshire Moors. I thought this place is stunning.
Yeah,
it's beautiful. You know?
It is.
I at the time lived in a place called Hornsey on the east coast, towards sort of Hull and Beverley that way. And I just loved the Moors that much, so I thought, well, let's just see what happened. And I think the first race we had about 15 people. Funny enough, we had 15 people, but we had 2 Americans and a Dutch guy and a French guy. You know what I mean? That, and it was. Over the years, basically, then I decided to add more races. There was a 55, which runs from Helmsley to Gisborough along the Cleveland Way, and sometimes it runs Gisborough to Helmsley. We swap it around. It's usually in March. Then there was the 60, which is the coastal section of the Cleveland Way. Then we have the 30 on New Year's Day. And then we have last 2 years ago, we set up the 200, which is all the Wolds Way. Well, it starts in Hull. You run out to the Wolds Way. Wolds Way across from Hull to to Filey, and then it picks up the 110 route all the way back to Helmsley.
Serious runs.
I think. I mean, of all the races, the 200 was set up because it was our 10th year, so we wanted to put a race on. But the race has got when you look compared to all the other races, it has a very tight cut-off compared to
60 hours, isn't it?
It is, it is. And luckily for the runners, for 1 or 2, it was unlucky because it hurt the feet quite a bit. it was a very dry weeks coming up to it, so the ground was very dry. Wald's Way can be quite muddy in sections, which slows you down.
Yeah.
So we had some fantastic runners take part. You know, they're just awesome. You know, like I think the winning time was like 44 hours or 43. Jerry McCullough, a good friend. You know, lovely guy. You know, crazy. I've just never seen anybody.
Oh my word!
Run so fast for so long.
Yeah.
The last 30 miles he fell to bits, but he got that much of a head start. And then Paul Nelson, the guy that was from Yorkshire, but he's moved over to Lakes now. He finished. He's Paul Nelson's in his 50s, and he finished about maybe a couple of hours after him. And you know
that is exceptionally quick. That is incredible.
And I looked through the list of people that entered, and there was one or two of the runners I thought they're a good runner, but this is very tight for them. I don't think they're going to finish. But they all surprised me, and they pulled in. And it was great seeing some of them, you know, on the course for the last 5-6 miles. They didn't know who the hell I was. They were out of it.
Yeah.
They were really out of it.
Yeah.
I read one race report by one guy who's is also a friend, so I can mention it. And you know, it's really funny when you read his report. When he got to Saltburn, which was... My brain can't function right now, but it was like 130 miles into it, 140 miles, something like that into the race.
Yeah, that sounds about right. Yeah.
And he was walking along the Saltburns, sort of seafront or wherever, you know, on the Cleveland Way.
Yeah.
And he saw a heart on the floor. He obviously didn't see it. He was hallucinating.
Yeah.
But he didn't know. He didn't want to pick it up in case I would disqualify him for picking his heart up off the floor.
Oh my word.
So you know, it's like, you know, I mean, that poor guy. You know, that poor guy. Yeah. Afterwards, I think it took him about 6 months mentally to recover.
Yeah.
I don't think he's done a Hardmoors race for a while. If he ever hears this, he'll know exactly what I'm talking about. But, you know, one of my good mates, Mark Dalton, who I often run and train with and various other things, he did the race.
Yeah.
And I think he's just already mentally gone anyway, because he finished it and he was like, he had a bit of sleep and he got up and drove home and went to work. He's something else, you know. Like,
who's this, man?
There's real kind of characters amongst a lot.
Yeah.
Mavericks.
But as well as the Ultra Series, and we have the 80 in a couple of weeks' time, which is, well, actually 3-4 weeks' time, which is the Wald's Way. So you have all different distances. Start on the ultras, starting from 30, going now up to 200 miles.
God.
But we also, about 6 years ago, set up the 26.2 series, which is races in different areas. And the 5k, sorry, no, there isn't a 5k. There's a 10k, half marathon, and there's a marathon. The standard joke is they're never that distance. The 10k is usually a minimum of 7 miles. Sometimes it's 9.5 miles or something like that. The standard joke is like 10k is 10 miles, you know, kind of thing. The half marathon can be anywhere from 14 up to 18 miles. And then the 26.2, the lowest it's ever been is maybe 27 miles, but sometimes it's like 30 miles.
Yeah.
So people don't know what they're coming across till they get it. And we have the 3 races on the same day, and they're in different parts of the North York Moors.
Oh, wow,
like, there's one Saltburn. We had one last weekend, which is Osmotherley. We have Goathland, Rosedale.
All gorgeous places.
Yeah, beautiful
Absolutely
places.
stunning.
Exactly. And so the main thing about it is like let's say the 10k, people have 3 hours to complete the 10k, which is, you know, like compared to what, you know, when you think of a road 10k, is quite a long time, 3 hours.
Yeah.
But it's the terrain they're going over.
Yeah.
Plus also it's less about the time, the race is the challenge itself. So then we get a lot of people that will enter that would have never entered anything like that. And same with the half. The half, they have 5 hours to complete. And the marathon, they have 10 hours to complete. So then you get a real mixture. You get the guys that are going around, and the guys and girls, sorry, when I say guys, I always usually mean people. Ladies and men, people. Yeah, you know, I just get the guys. That's very.
Yeah.
That will run one of the races and finish in 4 hours or 3.5 or whatever else like that in one of the 26.2 series, and then we'll have a lot of people finishing maybe 9.5 hours, and that last person is just as important as that first person.
Yeah, absolutely.
With all the races, you know, it's all about It's about completing rather than
competing.
Exactly.
Competing, yeah.
So, and they all get the t-shirt and the medal.
Yeah.
The first sort of 3 get a trophy on the first 50, the first 60, 70. You know, in one year we even had an 80-year-old gentleman from Osmotherley.
Wow.
One of them. Yeah.
What a guy.
Oh yeah, exactly. You know, it's like
phenomenal.
So it's all about these different people taking part, and it's developed into a huge community.
Amazing.
And on the Facebook, it's a massive community, and it's built and built and built and built.
Is that your page, sorry, on Facebook?
It's the Hardmoors
page.
Facebook. Yeah.
Right,
So what started off with 15 people is now, you know, I don't even know how many people on the Facebook group. I mean, not saying that, you know, obviously what Facebook is Facebook. You know, there's like 7,500 people in the group. Not all 7,500 have done the races, but you know what I mean. But
still,
that's a huge amount have done. A huge amount have done over the years.
Incredible.
So.
Yeah, it's amazing. It's amazing.
It's a
work.
big number. It's a big number.
You're doing a lot for the area in terms of organising these events.
But what we also do is every competitor enters a race. We donate £1 from the entry to the Cleveland Way. So probably raise about £4,000 a year for them, and then we also have something on when people enter, they can donate to Mountain Rescue. So we often donating money to Mountain Rescue.
Yeah. So you're giving something back to the area.
Exactly.
You're not just providing the event; you're giving something back as well.
We're also part of this. I think it's Cleveland Way. Wayne Armstrong will kill me for this because he's in charge of that for us. And I've got how we can exactly
we'll
call
attach
it.
his name to it.
Yeah, exactly.
Wayne Armstrong.
Exactly. What we do is we go. He organises them, so we go out into parts of Cleveland Way and we tidy up and look after, maintain it within reason.
Yeah.
And it's like set up by Malcolm Hodgkinson, who's a the Cleveland Way and the Wolds Way National Trust event, because not National Trust, National Trails. That's what I'm looking for.
Yeah.
National Trails. He sort of looks after all that side of things, and he's set this up for the area. So there is the different groups doing different areas. You get scouts and guides and whatever who look after certain area. We've got 3 different areas we look after. So it's all about trying to put something back into
absolutely
the area, because I mean, you know, we've got a huge amount of footfall going over that area, so I want to make sure it's looked after. But also then we've got people stopping in local villages, people coming from all over the place, and then deciding, they like the North York Moors, and then coming back.
It's gorgeous,
so it's brought a lot into the area.
Oh, I bet. Well, you said there about the first race for 15 people. There was 2 Americans, a French, and
exactly.
And a Dutch.
The appeal.
Yeah, it's the appeal, and you're bringing people to the area. So you're bringing tourism. You are absolutely attracting tourism. So it's good to give something back in that sense. I took my daughter up Rosebery Topping on Friday.
Yeah.
And you know what? I really don't understand why people feel the need to litter. I have to bring this up. I really do not get, but there was a group of 4 young lads. Granted, they were like 16, 17-year-old, but that doesn't mean that you've got the right to carry a water bottle up there and then when you finish it, throw it on the floor like that. My daughter seen him throw it and she was like, he's just threw that water bottle?
Yes.
And I was like, you're joking. So I looked around, but there was a water bottle. I just didn't see him throw it, so I just went and picked it up. And then there was another one on the way up. And then I found another one. So I'd found 3 on my way up there. And I just kept him in my hand. I thought, I don't want to make a point to them. I don't want to come across aggressive. So I just kept him in my hand. And I was just sitting next to them, like, tapping these bottles together. And then I took my bag off my back. And then I put the bottles in my bag. And I was just thinking, you know what? I know they've definitely seen me. I hope me just doing that to them is enough for them not to throw this litter on the floor in the future. And it is good to see people giving something back to the area. Like, the Cleveland Way is massive. It's huge and it's absolutely gorgeous. It's absolutely gorgeous. If anybody's listening to this and they haven't experienced what the North Yorkshire Moors has to offer, I'd advise it to anybody to just go there and have a little look around, but just look after it. Look after what you're doing. If you don't throw litter on the floor, because you're going to piss me off.
Exactly. Well, I mean, yesterday and today, I've been out on the routes which Osmotherley Marathon we held, because what we do is we for the marathon series, we tape it. We put yellow tape out, and the runners follow that. A couple of reasons. One, so they don't get lost. You know, some people aren't great with navigation.
Of course.
The other reason why we do it as well is if people are following the tape, then they're not thinking, oh, I'm going to try and take the shortcut and stray into, you know, somebody else's ground. You know, it's keeping control. And we have sweepers that go behind, and they remove the tape afterwards.
Nice. Yeah.
But sometimes bits get missed. So I was out yesterday. I would normally go out on a Monday, but I've had this man cold. Well, last week. So I was out yesterday, I was out today, and I was just running around, and there was still some yellow tape. I was removing the yellow tape as I was going around, and bits and bobs, and I was picking up bits of rubbish. And what you tend to find is, on the areas where I was running, you get walkers there, and you get cyclists, or you know, people like to walk a bit further. And I was looking out for any litter that I'd just pick up as I was going along. Yeah. And there was hardly anything. Yeah. Nothing at all. Yeah. Until you get to a spot where people could park and maybe walk 500 metres and then back. Yeah. And then there was litter there. Yeah. You know, it just...
it's as though, like, anybody who's actually taking a little bit more serious and ventures a little bit further out, they're the people who respect the environment.
Yes. Yeah, that's what it tends to show.
You do, but Rosebery Topman is very popular. You're going to get younger people from Middlesbrough going up there, and they aren't going to respect the environment. And it should be part of the curriculum, like to just really look after the environment. I don't know if it is, it might be, but it should be part of the curriculum to bring something in and just teach us about just being generally a good person. It doesn't take much to not throw rubbish on the floor, not much at all. And I'd like to think that people just have a little bit of decency about themselves to just not throw that plastic bottle on the floor. Yeah, it's not much. You're not asking for much. But I mean, I've had great fun talking to you, listening to your stories.
It's gone so fast.
Thank you so much.
It's gone so fast.
We're quite passionate about the subjects we've been talking about, so I do tend to go off.
It's amazing to get your insight, because obviously it's someone to the amount of stuff that you've done in your time already. It's amazing. It's we can all take a lot from what you've done here, and hopefully we can get you back on.
Absolutely.
And hear some more.
Just one thing. So you've clearly found a passion in your life and you've pursued it. Is there anything that you would say to anybody that feels like they have a passion in their life but they aren't pursuing it? Maybe they haven't even started running, but that could be the passion if they started. Is there anything that you'd sort of say to somebody? Because you've clearly done it yourself. You've went out there, you've created your website, you made all these events. If there's anything like you would say to somebody to encourage them to chase the passion.
Well, just to do it. Just to, you'll get plenty of naysayers, people who say you can't do this, you can't do that. You've just got to block them out and do what you want to do, as long as you're not hurting anyone. And you've just got to sometimes be a bit slightly selfish in ways and find the time, because there is a time to do things. There's a time to set those things out, and before you know it, if you don't do it now, in like 5-6 years time, you're going to think, why didn't I do that now? Why have I wasted this time? And there's always going to be hurdles, but every hurdle you get over is going to make you that much stronger. So just try.
You're never going to fail.
No, exactly.
You're always going to learn.
Well, I might have to do one of them smaller races.
There we go. That's a great way to finish. But John, thank you very much.
John. Thank you so much.
Take care. Thanks, Chris.
That absolutely flew over.
Thank you so much.
No, it was brilliant.